I talked a big game about Yakuza 0 in another video. It has phenomenal side quests, great minigames, and a good story. I've gone on record saying it was my favorite game I played since 2023. And when I finished it, it made me very excited to see where the story goes next in Yakuza Kiwami. But before we get to that, let me first explain to you the history of Yakuza. You see, the original Yakuza came out in 2005, followed by a sequel in 2006, and they kept pumping out sequels until 2015 when Yakuza 0 came out, which is a prequel to all of these games, importantly the original Yakuza, which was remade directly after Yakuza 0 into Yakuza Kiwami, which makes this game now more of a sequel to Yakuza 0 than where the story actually starts. Yakuza Kiwami shares similar fighting, some side quest plots carried over from Yakuza 0. It came out 10 minutes after Yakuza 0 and was built off of Yakuza 0. This is as indirect direct remake sequel as you can get. I love Yakuza 0, and it was a game that surprised me time and time again with how unique it was, and I had never played another game like it up to that point. Yakuza Kiwami did not live up to the hype, man. It wasn't even close. I don't know what it is, but this game just looks and feels the same as Yakuza 0. I mean, especially after playing Yakuza 2, this game is basically just Yakuza 0.5. If there's one thing that I took away from playing this game, it's that it was just disappointing. The first thing you get when you open up this game is a really weird render of Kiryu, the main protagonist. I don't know why he looks like this. He never looks like this again. It's kind of weird. Anyways, let's start at the beginning. Kiryu goes to jail for a decade and loses everything. Fucking everything. When you return to Kamurocho, especially after I played Yakuza 0, everything is different. Time has moved on. Kiryu's friends and the city are all different. The empty box that was the symbol of Yakuza 0 is completely gone. A tower erected in its place to celebrate the new millennium, washing away the events of the prior game. It's great. Everything's changed except for Kiryu, creating this fish out of water effect in the city you became so familiar with in the last game. It makes you feel lost in the city you once knew. And that's the best thing this game does. You start off the game before Kiryu goes to jail, having everything you unlocked, including a new fighting style called the Dragon of Dojima, which we'll get to later, but you start off a fucking powerhouse, just like at the end of Yakuza 0. Everything's there, throwing people into each other, body slamming them headfirst into the ground. Yep, that's Kiryu, that's what he does. But once Kiryu goes to jail, you lose everything. All of his skills and techniques go away, and you're at the same place you were at the beginning of Yakuza 0, which I think makes perfect sense if you want to actually have a progression system in your game. But you know what doesn't get reset back to 0? The enemy's difficulty. For better or for worse, you can feel how much of a disadvantage you're at in fights. It feels like they took the endgame difficulty of enemies from Yakuza 0 and put them in there for every single fight from beginning to end. The bosses, whoever's job it was to program their difficulty, just did not fucking show up for work. 90% of the bosses, actually, you know what? I can name one boss that was actually balanced well, which is Rooftop Gunman. I don't know his actual name. He shows up like once. Probably fucking Jared. That Jared's boss fight was a fun boss fight, but everyone else is just so annoying. They're constantly dashing around or grabbing you, and they always put in the most bullet sponge enemies in there with you, and the boss, they all rush you at the same time, and whenever you start a combo, one of them will just come in and stab you in the back, and you won't be able to get your heat bar to go up because it just keeps happening over and over again, and they just drain your health, and you're barely doing any damage to them, and you're constantly taking health items to get your health back up, but it's okay because Kiryu never leaves the house without at least 16 fucking sushi sets on him. They put you at a severe disadvantage in the beginning of the story for what I'm guessing what they wanted you to do is work back up to being this powerful fighter, but no matter how powerful I got, it felt like I was just barely any match for the enemies, especially the bosses. I wanted to see if the game was easier once you had all of the abilities or most of the abilities unlocked. So I went back through the game on New Game Plus, and the game was just way easier. So I just think this game isn't balanced very well. This brings me to the mechanic that the game I believe is named after, the Kiwami, which I believe means bullshit in Japanese, because this feature is bullshit. Basically, enemies can now regenerate health, and while they're doing that, you can use your Kiwami ability to punch them out of their health regen state. And that's it. That's all it's there for. It's a new heat action. The problem is, sometimes your enemy will use it if you're knocked down on the ground and like you're getting up. You won't have enough energy in your heat bar, so you can't actually use the Kiwami, and they'll just end up regaining a fuck ton of health that took you a long ass time to get down, because you know, as I said before, every boss has so much damage resistance and it feels so shitty every time they do it. Also, you don't start the game with the Kiwami, you have to unlock it through the skill tree. So on the early boss fights, you just have to sit there and watch them regain health while you desperately punch them. The Kiwami isn't like a thing that does a super lot of damage. Most of the time it'll just get them a little bit lower than they were, or it'll just like stop them from getting a bunch of health if they're late in their health regen stage. It's trash. The Kiwami is trash. Remove this feature from the game and it'll make the fighting better. So that brings me to the Dragon of Dojima fighting style. This is the game's new addition that sets the fighting apart from Yakuza 0. In my experience, this fighting style is just fucking stupid. No situation where I ever thought, hey, let me switch to this fighting style. Not once. And that's mostly because of how you unlock it. Unlike the other skills which you unlock through skill points through actually fighting enemies in side missions, and you get those skill points and you could assign it into the 3 categories. Well, there's a 4th category dedicated to this fighting style where you can't use skill points, but you instead have to unlock abilities by beating up a man. An insane man. So that makes it okay. Goro Majima is the best part of this game. Goro wants to have the truest fight with the former Dragon of Dojima he can have. So to increase his fighting skills to where he once was, he wants to fight Kiryu at every opportunity he can find. Hence why this is called motherfucker everywhere. He'll hide in a traffic cone, garbage can, he'll chase you through the street like a giant goofy version of Mr. X. Sometimes he doesn't even want to fight you. He'll just want to go bowling or play darts. Goro is always on your ass, and sometimes your dick too. Yakuza guy is so sweet. He takes you out on a date and lets you beat him up afterward. He's the best. The best part is Goro was one of the main protagonists from the last game, and he retained all of his skills you upgraded for him in the last one. And Kiryu lost all of his, so it really feels like you're fighting a monster you've created. It's cool. So to unlock the Legend of Dojima fighting style, you have to beat Goro, and every time you beat him, you unlock 1 skill point in the tree. But the problem is, by the end of the story, I only had about 11 of the 48 abilities unlocked, and it's not like I was ignoring Goro missions or running away from him all the time. I did them whenever they weren't available. So I looked up, like, what's the deal with this fighting style? Is it just bad? And some people had the same question as me online. And most of the responses were, oh yeah, it doesn't get good until you've almost completely upgraded it. That's just bad game design if I only have 11 out of the 48 by the end of the game.
Oh, yes! Oh, yes! Come on!
Yakuza has the best side stories of any video game ever. They're so good that they started to make me believe that weird shit happens in Japan like this every day. And in Yakuza Kiwami, they're still pretty good. There's this weird trend in Yakuza Kiwami where Kiryu gets scammed a lot. Side missions are what made the city feel alive in the last game. And I think it's interesting, whether intentional or not, almost all of these side missions go the same too. Kiryu gets scammed and he either pays the scammer, or if you're me, Kiryu will go, I'm not falling for that shit, and then punch the guy in the face. It makes the game world feel a lot less varied than before. Not necessarily that that's a bad thing, it's just kinda not as unique. What about the minigames? Well, almost all of them return from Yakuza 0, and they're mostly all the same, except for the 2 main ones that return from Yakuza 0. The pocket racing, which is the exact same gameplay again from Yakuza 0, but with a new story. And Mesu King, a game where sexy women dress up like bugs and fight each other. My favorite card is the Ladybug, in case anybody's wondering, because of her ability, obviously. But Mesu King's gameplay is the gameplay from Yakuza 0, where you find cards throughout the map, just like the telephone cards. The fighting is just the cat fights reused from Yakuza 0. Like, literally the exact same models and animations and everything. The gameplay is rock, paper, scissors. There's no skill, unless you're being an ultimate one-handed gamer. It wasn't fun in Yakuza 0, and it's not fun here. I think the pocket car racing game is very good. I mean, you can get very detailed with how you make and build your car in different races. It's basically a whole different game inside of a game. But remember what I said before, it's the exact same minigame from Yakuza 0 with a different story. I mean, this whole game is just more Yakuza 0. Just not as good. The only minigame they didn't bring back was the one where Kiryu busts a nut to bikini girls. I'm not fucking joking. So let's talk about the weakest part of Yakuza Kiwami. The story. It's a story that starts off really strong, then kind of goes off the rails. Kind of like Spider-Man 3, where Spider-Man 3 starts off and goes off. No, we are not doing that comparison again. We did that for RE3, but not here. So, as I was saying before, Kiryu goes to jail for a while. Let's go back a little bit further. So, Nishikami kills the Dojima family patriarch because he was trying to rape Yumi, and Kiryu takes the fall for it and goes to jail. And while he's in jail, Kiryu's love Yumi, that I established in that last sentence, has a mental breakdown and disappears, and Nishikami becomes a bad guy. Yeah, starting this game felt like literally the worst possible series of events that could have happened to my boy Kiryu. He lost his love, he lost his best friend, and he's in fucking jail, dude. So anyways, Kiryu gets back after 10 years of jail and figures out 10 billion yen has been stolen from the chairman of the Tojo clan, and Nishikami reveals that to everyone because he wants to be head of the Tojo clan. Chairman Sarah is killed, he's no longer head, and there's a power vacuum, and therefore that kicks off the events of the story. Later in the story, it's revealed that Yumi had a daughter named Haruka that has a pendant, which is the key to the 10 billion that, oh my god, Yumi stole. Yumi stole the 10 billion. And Haruka, Yumi's daughter, Kiryu gets to take care of now, and he takes her to a homeless camp, and a gambling den, and a whorehouse. Kiryu is not a good dad. This is a pretty alright story for the most part. It has the appeal of, what happened to Nishikami, why is he bad guy, and Yumi's disappearance, and why she stole the 10 billion, and who killed Chairman Sarah. But I'm pretty disappointed, not with the setup and, all that, but how it all paid off in the end. Nishikami is set up as the main antagonist, and is a pretty good antagonist for about the first 2/3 of the story. He has a really compelling backstory about what happened once Kiryu's gone, and how his sister died, and him being compared to Kiryu, him having this inferiority complex pushed him over the edge and made him a jealous, hateful monster who, instead of appreciating Kiryu, because he took the fall for him and went to jail, instead just made him full of resent. It's completely believable, him being pushed into this direction. My problem is, what they then do with him after all this is set up is literally nothing. In the last third of the story, Nishikami just completely disappears and then shows up for an endgame boss battle. They built up Nishiki this whole game as this big bad with people telling Kiryu how dangerous he's become, and he's a serious opponent. He attacks Kiryu once with his guys at the beginning of the game, and then once around halfway through. Then at the end he shows up by himself once the real villain's defeated, and is like, and then fucking kills himself for no reason. Dude, the main guy was defeated, too. Isn't that a little bit overkill? I see articles out there like, Nishiki is one of the greatest video game villains. This is how you write a video game villain. And I'm sitting there like, did we play the same fucking game? And that brings me to another point. To be honest, He wasn't even the main villain. This goofball Genghis Bingus was. Once this guy shows up, the game really starts falling apart. Genghis Bingus in the end is revealed that 10 billion that Yumi stole was actually his money, and that he used the Tojo clan to launder it, and he was gonna use it to rule Tokyo or some shit. This is where it gets really messy. Genghis master planned everything, including getting Kiwami to kill Sarah, big reveal, because he knew Sarah would betray him. However, what he didn't know was that Yumi was alive, because plot twist, Genghis Bingus is the father of Haruka, and he wanted her killed because Yumi was his side piece, and he couldn't have anyone know because he was married into power, and that's how he had his power, and if somebody were to find out, that would be a risk to his power. So he told Sarah to go kill Yumi, but Sarah was like, nah bro, I'm gonna do my own thing, and fucking just like didn't, and Kazuma took care of her and Haruka. So then Sarah steals the money. Why did he steal the money from Genghis in the first place? Well, because he actually wanted to cut ties with him. Well, if that's the case, when Kiwami tells everyone about the 10 billion being stolen from the Tojo clan, why doesn't he just go, don't worry guys, it's not our money, I'm trying to cut ties with this fucking MIA dude, I stole the money to pretend so he doesn't have it anymore, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he gets capped. And let me remind you, all of this is revealed in the last hour of the story. This whole game is just Kiryu running around trying to figure out what the fuck is going on and trying to find Yumi, and then all of this is just info dumped at the end. So Jingu shows up at the end, and he goes, I'm the bad guy, and I knew Sarah was gonna betray me this whole time, which is the most anime shit of all time. And then he tries to kill Yumi and Haruka because he wants to tie up loose ends, even though he doesn't know where the fuck his money is, and he knows Yumi knows where it is, but he's just gonna kill her anyway. But then Yumi reveals she has a bomb, and is gonna blow everyone up. Including her 8-year-old daughter, which... why would Yumi give the pendant to Haruka, which is the key to the $10 billion? Why would she give that to her 8-year-old daughter? That doesn't make any sense. Because it's gonna be safe? But literally everybody knows about the pendant and knows she gave it to Haruka. Nishiki definitely knows about the pendant at least, because he kidnaps her like, I think twice or once, he kidnaps her. In the moment while playing the game, none of this really matters, but if you start to think about any of it, it doesn't make sense. In Yakuza 0, Kiryu's being framed is the main driving force that gets you invested into the story, and gets you involved with Tachibana Real Estate and the empty lot. It may not be the main focus after a while, but it's constantly brought up and remains a main part of the story, and while I think the ending of the game isn't perfect, it all comes together in the end and still wraps up nicely. In Yakuza Kiwami, shit just stops making sense once you get to the Millennium Tower in the last 20 minutes. This game still has good elements, you know, the stuff from Yakuza 0, like the minigames and Majima itself is great, but the fighting at the end of the day is just so poorly balanced. And the story in the end just kind of falls apart. Playing this after Yakuza 0 made its flaws only more apparent, and where Yakuza 0 felt like this brand new experience I've never played before, Yakuza Kiwami did the same thing as Yakuza 0. But worse. It even reuses the same karaoke song, Bakemate, which has to be the single best song in any video game ever, and it uses a worse version. 5 out of 10. My suggestion is to play Yakuza 0, then watch the Yakuza stage play where they turn this game's story into a comedy, and then go straight into Kiwami 2. But last thing of all, Roger, go play Yakuza 0 before I fucking kill you.